I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we trade our mother's wedding ring for a space moped. Because this week we watched The Rings of Akhaten.
Written by Neil Cross.
Directed by Farron Blackburn.
And aired on April 6th, 2013. So before we jump into anything about this episode, remember how we were wondering what the T stood for in Russell T. Davies last week? Well, I looked it up.
Does it stand for Tyler?
No. It actually doesn't stand for anything. His real name is Stephen Russell Davies. And he decided to use Russell Davies as his TV name. His
SAG-AFTRA name or whatever?
Yeah.
Like David Tennant isn't actually his real name?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people in the TV and movie industry, it's not their real name or whatever.
Yeah.
But apparently there was another semi-famous Russell Davies who worked in British TV, who's obviously not as famous now as this Russell Davies.
Yeah.
But he just threw the T in there to differentiate.
Why did he choose T? And why not something like G?
Yeah.
Russell G. Davies.
Russell
for
Z.
Russell
Davies.
Gangster Davies.
Just add 5 names in them.
Russell, quote, Rose Tyler, unquote, Davies. Russell, the guy who couldn't let Rose Tyler go, Davies.
Russell, quote, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, unquote, Davies. Have you seen The Rock's Sunday or I forget what it was, Saturday or Sunday sushi dinner where he eats a table full of sushi?
No, but that wouldn't surprise me since I bet he consumes thousands of calories
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. But anyway, this episode, written by Neil Cross. Neil Cross was asked to do a Doctor Who episode. Neil Cross is actually another semi-big name in Britain.
Writer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's written and been the showrunner for several other shows. I was looking up his other shows. Some of them look pretty interesting. So he was asked to do this episode.
He does 2 episodes this season.
Yeah, he did Hyde.
Yeah.
He did that one first, and the production team was very pleased with how that went, so they asked him to do this one as well, which he did.
And that's it?
And that's all that's interesting about this.
Wow. Pretty much.
Jenna Louise Coleman said this was one of her favorite episodes of this season.
Well, I mean, I can see that. I can see
this is her
that.
episode, her first foray into the unknown.
She's predominantly the main character of this episode, and
Right.
just thinking about the episodes coming up, that she falls more into traditional companion role where the Doctor's the main character in the next couple of episodes until about the end of the season. So I can see that.
Yeah, the reason why Matt Smith was kind of semi-absent in the first half of this episode was that he was doing work for Nightmare in Silver, or whatever it's called, later this season.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. But I think it works. I think it works out having Clara be sort of the main person throughout this episode.
Yeah, well, it introduces a lot of her character traits and introduces that idea that the TARDIS isn't like her, which does come back. It's not just a throwaway line in this story.
It introduces that idea of her being a replacement for a previous companion. Kind of
Stephen
like
Moffat does Martha. Stephen Moffat does Martha. Stephen Moffat does Martha.
But I really like this episode. This is actually my favorite new Doctor Who episode.
Surely you must be joking.
I posted that on Twitter and I got a couple responses you're kidding, right?
You have to be kidding, right? There are superior episodes to this. I mean, I don't think this is the bottom of the barrel. I don't think it's great, though. I think it's just really, really dull.
I think most, not consensus, but I think there are a lot of people out there who do think this is really low on the scale.
That actually surprises me because I've never thought that this was that bad. I've just always found this kind of dull and uninteresting. There are interesting things in it, and I like the overarching plot, but I find that it slows down a lot the instant people start singing is about the time this episode slows down a lot.
Well, I liked and I'm going to touch on at the end, again, some of the ecological and economic, strangely, things that are going on in this episode.
Which, to me, brings to mind the question of, I feel like there's a distinction somewhere here that we've never made between liking the questions and the topics the episode discusses and liking the episode itself. Maybe you just like this because it's super ecological, but cut those from it and it's nothing.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like, what do you mean by cut those from it?
But I'm
Like,
saying like if you transplanted the exact same ecological ideas into another episode, maybe you'd like that episode as much as you like this. Like put those ecological ideas into I don't know, Power of Three. It was the first episode I thought of for some reason.
Yeah, but I mean like and here's the thing, I don't want to go too heavy into this, but it's like there's this idea, and let's talk about this in terms of writing for a second, because this is just where I've heard it, of like all writing, all aesthetic writing is inseparable from its content, and like that works vice versa as well, as like, you know, all the content of you know, whatever it is, TV writing, TV making, writing, you know, etc., whatever, is inseparable from its own ideas, because the plot, and this is actually something this episode touches on, weirdly enough, that goes back to the sort of Sherlock Holmes type discussion of like the representative nature of what you kind of see on screen. And I don't know, I think there's something inseparable almost about those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I disagree to some extent. I think you can separate the content from the actual execution thereof. Like, personally, I might like some of the ideas in this episode, but I consider it a dull episode overall because I just couldn't actually get into it.
Sure, so, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think there's some sort of... I don't know how to explain it. I just think there's some sort of cognitive dissonance between those things. But,
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get super heavy into it.
Well, it begins with the Doctor viewing what appears to just be a random couple.
Yeah, just kind of stalking some people throughout history.
It's just a little weird when you think about it.
And looking back, I guess he's tracing their history, I guess, their story. He's
also really tracing Clara's story.
Yeah, this is also an episode about... This is a metafictional episode. It's an episode about storytelling itself. So, also another reason why it's pretty obvious that I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah. I mean, sort of. Again, I found it incredibly dull. So...
There are parts of this that made me go like, well, like, what's going on here? Like, kind of near the end, but I don't know.
Well, the Doctor's stalking Clara's history because...
We find out that these are her parents.
Yeah.
The earliest thing you get from them is her dad sort of just walking down the street, and a leaf blows into his face, causing him to stumble into the road.
That was the most unbelievable part of the story, is that a leaf flying into someone's face would cause them to walk into the road, and that he wouldn't just like stop where he is, take the leaf off his face, and then continue.
Yeah, well, he doesn't seem to be the most present guy. You know, maybe he needs to practice, you know, those presence of mind, you know, exercises or whatever. But yeah, he stumbles into the road and he's almost hit by Clara's mom, whose name is...
Well, no, Clara's mom saves him from being hit by the car, actually, is what happens.
Oh.
Some random car is just driving down the road and Clara's mom pulls him out of the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way less Back to the Future than you think it is.
Yeah, so then they kind of... You skip ahead. It's done really strangely. It is. It's like, it doesn't seem like any time has passed, but it has.
Well, it does start pouring rain.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's England, so, you know, it could be the next minute. Rim shot? No.
Boom, roasted.
It's however much time later, and Clara's dad has saved the leaf. And this is the moment where you question, like, spending the rest of your life with this guy. She's like, you know, I saved this leaf. You're just like, oh, all right.
I don't know. He sells it pretty romantically as like, this is the most important leaf in human history, because if it didn't grow in that exact spot and come off that exact branch at that exact time, it would have never blown into my face, which is just chaos theory repackaged.
Well, no, here's where, because up until now I wrote
board.
I wrote this in my notes. I was like, it feels like I'm watching a goddamn Hallmark movie. And when he said that, I was like, okay, so things are interconnected. It's a leaf. It's part of, you know, the natural world. This is, you know, there's some ecological stuff going on here. And then I got interested.
I don't know. His speech is more chaos theory to me, which is like very small variations in variables can create a massive difference in the execution. He was
Yeah.
basically saying a very small change in this one variable that was set in place probably hundreds or at least dozens of years ago when that tree was planted, set in motion this course of events that leads to Clara, and by extension leads to all of the nonsense that Clara does in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely that too, and you can even I think trace it back of like why the tree was planted there, and what's going on here.
Yeah, might have just been by
like that.
chance.
Right.
Might have been intentional. Maybe someone from the future planted the tree specifically so that would happen. I don't know. That's I'm not like gesticulating or foreshadowing something in the show with that statement. Anyway, they have a kid, and the
name
kid.
of Clara.
Well, we don't know that until the kid kicks a soccer ball that hits the doctor, and they come over to apologize, and he's just like, "Oh, it's fine. I was being a buffoon. Walking here, should have hid myself better. Should have been a better stalker." And then they tell him that little girl's name is Clara, and he's like, "Oh, hi, Clara." Smash cut to adult Clara smash cut to older Clara visiting the grave of her grandmother. Not grandmother,
her
mother. And I wrote a note
2005.
that was like, is this the same grave in which the other Clara is buried? The same, not grave, graveyard or cemetery?
Yeah,
I know we once differentiated between the two, but I don't remember the differentiation anymore.
That would be some weird nonsense. Is like right, behind her mother's grave is like her other incarnation's grave or whatever's going on here. Whatever this is. I like this. I really like this mystery. And I don't know, this episode doesn't contribute or detract from my theory of like how they're different incarnations and, she's being reincarnated or whatever, but, yeah, it's just, I like how this is being done.
Just wait till you find out that Clara is just Stephen Moffat's self-insert character.
I mean, his second after River Song, kind of.
Clara's way more of a self-insert than River ever is or was. Or will be. No spoilers.
I feel like in some way Sally Sparrow is as well. Not the TV Sally Sparrow, the short story one.
Perhaps.
It's like a little kid who gets to interact with the doctor and is like a writer, Like
yeah,
10-year-old Stephen Moffat. Like, who 10-year-old Stephen Moffat could have been,
Anyway, Clara's boyfriend puts his arm around her while they stand.
Yeah, who was
over.
that? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
Just
be
some
honest.
guy
just
there.
Just some extra. Just some guy standing on the side of the road. They're like, hey, come in the scene. And then smash cut to older Clara sitting on the staircase with her book in hand. And she hears the TARDIS outside. And she waits for the doctor to knock on the door. And then she's like, oh, doctor, how's it going? I definitely wasn't expecting you.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to touch on, I also like how this is being done where, like last episode, the doctor ends with like, I got to find out who she is. I got to uncover the mystery or whatever. And then we go into this. And it's kind of, it follows up on that in like a less direct sense than like the classic series cliffhanger where it's just like, here we go. I don't know. I just really like how this is being done.
I guess. He says something like, well, she's nobody. She's just nobody.
Yeah. Which is obviously not true since she's like throughout time. It could just be a situation of like, there's only, the more faces you see, the more you're like, you see faces that look almost the same as other faces.
Could just be a situation with the 11th Doctor's building up this mystery where there isn't any.
Somehow I don't think that's going to be the case. But I guess I'll find out.
So Clara goes into the TARDIS and the Doc's like, where do you want to go? And she's like, just flatlines.
And this is where, if I were the doctor, I'd be like, all right, just get like,
abort. I'll find someone else.
This isn't working.
This isn't going to work out. It's not you, it's me. Even though it's definitely you.
And then she turns around and gives the most disappointing answer ever where she's like, take me somewhere interesting. Or
just somewhere awesome. So he lands.
So he takes her to a bow tie emporium.
No,
his bow ties are up.
Even worse. He takes her to the asteroid outside of the city that he's going to take her to. He's like, look over there. That's where we can go.
This is the callback to like every companion's second story has them looking out onto a wide vista of space, Every new companion, that is. Happened with Rose, happened with Martha.
I don't think it happened with Donna.
Happened. Did it? What was Donna's second story? That would be the first story of series 4.
That was the one with the adipose.
Right. What was the second story of series 4? I feel like it happened there.
Error. The Fires of Pompeii.
Okay, never mind. Whatever. It didn't happen with Donna. Did happen with Amy.
Didn't happen with
Didn't
Rory.
happen with Rory. But it's like the main, I don't know, female companions except Donna. Because it feels like, because characters like Mickey and Rory in some ways feel like accessory companions.
Accessory companions. Inventing a new word on the podcast. Yeah. Or a new term, a new phrase.
Yeah.
Accessory companions. I'd use that more for like
Jackie.
Marge in Dr. Widow and Wardrobe. I'm amazed I remembered her name.
Yeah, I am too. Because I didn't even know what you were talking about until you said the story's name. Marge. Whenever someone says Marge, I just think of Marge Simpson.
I feel like most people do that, since that's like the most famous Marge in existence.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, the Doctor, they go to this sort of, it's part
just
of a
some
ring.
random outcropping chilling outside the main planet.
Yeah, so this is a really cool setting. They kind of do interesting things with this, like with the things aligning. But I really like this, and I wish this was explored more. I think it is explored to some extent, but like they're around this planet, I guess, and
yeah,
they're
that
on
was
the rings.
the one thing I questioned where the Doctor's like, that planet over there, and I was like, that.
It looks like a sun.
Yeah, there's a sun, and then there's like a city on an asteroid, and I'm like, which of the two are you referring to? Because I wouldn't consider either of those planets.
Well, we find out what this, planet, quote unquote, is in a way, and this is related to the ecological things, but basically there are 7 civilizations, each on
their own planet.
Their own planet, within
system.
the rings of the larger thing.
Yeah.
And I thought this was really cool. I liked it.
Yeah, I assume this larger thing was like a sun type thing, providing light and heat to these 7 planets. But then the way the Doctor talks implies that this sun/asteroid system is like one planet in the whole like 9 planet system, and then I got confused.
The word planet like hundreds of years ago just meant like anything in space, so like stars just anything in space. What we call stars today were also called planets like hundreds of years ago.
Also, the Doctor wouldn't be so rudimentary to use a term like that.
I don't know. He might be getting flowery and like prosaic.
I doubt that.
I don't know.
If he was doing that, he would have used the term celestial body, which is way more flowery than any of the terms we've used so far.
Well, we don't know.
The heavens. These celestial bodies trace their paths across the heavens.
But they're there, and I really like how this is done visually too. You sort of see these pyramid-like structures coming out of the asteroids or just whatever these things are.
Well, there's this main pyramid that gets revealed from behind this other just like asteroid.
Right. Time to post that chart again. I think that's my
the difference between asteroids and meteors and meteorites. Opportunity just died, and I found out, I think it was Opportunity. I was reading up about Mars rovers, and I think either Opportunity or Spirit discovered the first like meteorite on Mars during their mission. I thought that was kind of interesting because I never really considered that other planets would have meteorites on them, or meteors. Meteorites. Asteroids.
Planets.
I don't think that's true.
You didn't think other planets would have planets on them?
Exactly. We get this.
Yeah.
Like what?
That's why, like, you go back and like, all right, this is a part of linguistic history, but I guess that's also why building these terms out is kind of communicatively important. But
yeah. We get this kind of line where the Doctor explains that this system believes that all life in the universe originated from their system.
Right.
Which is
not true. It started on Earth, no.
Well,
it's
Clara asks the Doctor if it's true, and he says, well, it's a story.
Right.
He clearly implying that it's not true.
He says it's a nice story, but yeah, implying, I guess, right now that it's not true. But later on, this story itself is one that links in some ways or connects or sets up a relationship between that's sort of lost in the English language between story and history in a really interesting way.
But I was going to say it's...
And I love that line too. Just, that's a nice story.
Not a unique position to take. I mean, I feel like human religion obviously postulates that all life began here. So...
Right. I was reading, I don't know, there's... Oh man, what was this? I forget where I read this. There's some like pre-colonial like tribe, I guess, in Eastern Africa. I don't know which country now, but obviously the countries of Africa were created by Europe, so it doesn't matter back then.
Well, not all of them.
Not all of them, but like a lot of them.
Most of the ones in the south and the north and the west. Most of the ones along the coast, basically, is what I'm saying.
Well, you know about the Berlin Conference.
Well, yeah,
right,
of
where
course.
they sat down and were like, all right, here's France's portion, and here's written in like a really messed up way. But
yeah. But
anyway,
most of the internal countries are less likely, I guess, to have been created by Europe, since the coastal ones were easier to get to back in the day.
Right. What was I saying? Oh, right. There's some. I was reading about this. There's some ancient society in Eastern Africa whose like origin myth is that they came from Sirius. I forget what it's actually called. Sirius B or something like that. I don't know. And they like knew way more about this than like NASA did, and like, yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
They could just be making it up. You don't know.
Well, I mean, it's
NASA could just be making it up.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that like this is actually true. Like, hey, I don't know, it might be, but like, it's just interesting this story they have about coming from another planet or another place far away.
I just want to know what they came in then. How did they get here?
Just jumped.
What is their purpose? They just jumped. What is their purpose? Was the other planet dying? Are we repeating history in this story? Are we killing off Earth as we have killed off our planet before? These are the kind of questions I want answers to now. I'm gonna be honest.
Well, the story doesn't provide any of them.
Damn it!
You know, you talk about setting up the relation, or I talk about setting up the relationship between story and history. You know, I don't think watching this story is going to give us too much insight. But it might give us it gives us theoretical insight into how to look at these things. But like, I don't know. Anyway, they go down to the city.
The Doctor, for I think the first time in many seasons, makes a reference to Susan. Because he does. You missed this?
Yeah, I missed it.
You missed this incredibly important moment?
Yep.
The Doctor and Clara are walking out, and the Doctor's explaining everybody who's there, and Clara's like, oh, you've been here before? And the Doctor's like, yeah, I came here with my granddaughter. And walks away, and Clara's like, wait, what? And she chases after him.
Get on this, Big Finish. Want my Dr. Susan Akhaten story. This society, I think, is called Akhaten or Akhaten.
I believe so. I think the godlike
thing,
being is also called Akhaten.
Right, because it's the rings of Akhaten.
Yeah. Because the Doctor says that this is really interesting. You should come more often, which is how Clara insinuates that he's been there before.
And yeah, I don't know. So what sort of culture do you think this is in some way based off of? Because like Akhaten, I don't know, sounds sort of.
Oh, I thought something
almost.
Egyptian.
Right. And they have the pyramids, but they look more like, you know, American pyramids with the steps, kind of.
Kind of, but I thought Egyptian.
Yeah, I did as well.
Just also the like clay-esque architecture of the market area reminded me a lot of
robes too, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of post-colonial theory, like stuff from Edward Said, Frantz Fanon, and like I don't know, there's so many connections there, and like I'm reading their theories, and I'm like, classic Doctor Who is part of this.
I'm reading A Wrinkle in Time.
Nice.
Which I realized
I want to reread that book.
Yeah, I'm rereading it, and I realized that I read a review that was like Madeleine L'Engle has a lot of Christian doctrine in her book. She was just way more subtle about it than like C.S. Lewis. And during my reread, I was reading and I was like, you know what? They're actually right. There's a lot of like Christian doctrine in this that I totally didn't even realize was in here when I was a kid because it went way over my head.
Yeah, I didn't. Like, this is my first time hearing about any of that. I read the book like twice, I think. I don't know.
Like the younger brother wants a book read to him by Calvin, the guy they pick up, and And then Calvin just comes down casually and he's like, yeah, I read a book to Charles. And I'm like, oh, what'd you read? And he's like, Genesis. His choice, of course. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
But anyway, they start exploring the area, and this is kind of, I think Neil Cross had a comment about this, is like, this is kind of like Star Wars's, Doctor Who does the Star Wars cantina. But this is so cool. Like, there's so many awesome like aliens in this scene. They really went above and beyond, which is weird because
it's weird because I don't think they use any of these alien designs again. So that's a bit of a waste of a budget there.
Yeah, the sort of idea behind this episode was that it would be sort of a low budget episode. I don't know how true that ended up being, especially with the effects near the end, but they made all these costumes with the idea that they could be used again with like minor changes. And
right.
I don't know if they use any of them again.
Actually. I don't recognize any of them.
Maybe things just went horribly wrong and they're like, oh shoot, this went way over budget. We can't do this
costumes
again.
got burned in a mysterious fire.
Well, here's the thing. Neil Cross was asked to come back after Hyde for this.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't come back since.
Yeah. What does that say?
So, I know the writer isn't the only one responsible for these kinds of things, but, what they write down on the page is definitely related.
X-Files theme. The truth is out there. So the Doctor and Clara wander around for a bit, and eventually the Doctor explains that the society is built upon... The form of currency is basically sentimentality.
Yeah, so this is something I want to touch on at the end, but let's invoke Marx for a minute. Instead of the labor theory of value, which was obviously part of like what's used today in like our industrialist capitalist society or whatever, where the amount of work that goes into something is not entirely like a one-to-one correlation, but is related to its value.
Right.
This is the subjective theory of value that says like, or the theory that can say like, this dollar's worth $2 because it's the first dollar I ever earned. It's based on like your attachment or what worth people place on things subjectively, which is really interesting.
Yeah, so basically this whole society is built on that. They apparently have methods for reading how much psychic energy is linked to an object.
Right.
Clara's like, that's interesting. The Doctor's like, yeah. She's like, why don't you pay for the mopeds? I'm sure you have something you're attached to in the TARDIS. And he's like, he pulls out a sonic screwdriver and then he's like, and puts it away.
There's so many moments in this that are like, that tease you with like the sonic screwdriver's destruction or it getting written out and then it doesn't.
Nope.
But they don't get the speeder right away. They do later.
Yeah, it comes back later.
Yeah. Oh, we skipped how the sort of person who's trying to sell the speeder or barter it or whatever
Barks.
Barks.
Oh, the Doctor can understand her perfectly.
Yeah.
Clara can't, apparently.
And then Clara just gives her sort of a random bark and was like, what did you just tell her? Like,
buzz off.
They keep wandering around for a bit. The Doctor,
they get split up.
Yeah, they get split up, and Clara finds a little girl getting chased by
Mary Gillel. That's the little girl's name.
Yeah, Mary, getting chased by soldier-looking people.
Right.
And so she sort of follows and tries to figure out what's going on and help the girl, and finds out that this little girl is the Queen of Years, whose job it is to retain information.
Yeah, she was what I meant to say was she was appointed when the previous queen died, when she was a baby.
Right.
Mary Gillel was a baby, and she was appointed for this position when the previous Queen of Years died.
Right. And their sort of job is to invoke like history through song. She keeps like the knowledge of their people through song, and they use that to calm the god or whatever, which is interesting. I mean, it's again a plot point that's about things getting passed on, which is in the form of something subjective or something artistic, like a song or a story. And it's also like an ecological thing, right? Is like when one thing dies, the next one comes about necessarily or something like that. I don't know. But obviously Clara doesn't recognize or doesn't like know who she is, although it seems as if anyone in this society would know Mary.
Yeah.
Which is why Mary is surprised. She's like, what? You don't know who I am?
And Clara's like,
Well, Clara sort of calms her down because she's scared that she's going to mess up the song because she's very young. It seems like the other. It doesn't seem like this is something you get inducted to as a child, right? It's just
Yeah.
whenever the previous one dies. Or actually, yeah, no, it is. Never mind.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. Oh, I just realized this.
Well, she
It's
gets-
every 1,000 years. Some of these people, I guess, we don't know their longevity, but like some of these people probably
Got away with never having to sing the song.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe they all live like 5,000 years. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
But Mary's scared, and Clara calms her down because she oh god, this is freaking strange. She tells a story about her mother telling her a story that she told her after she got lost and scared and she was found again. And she thinks of her mother saying like, however lost you get, wherever you are, I'm always going to be there to find you. And then she thinks about her mother's grave and how that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Especially now that she's. And there's a thing also of like, even if her mother were still alive, she would be like, she's far away from Earth. She's completely out of the reach of her mother.
Yeah.
Could that even be true anymore? But really, I think that's a moment that Clara realizes.
Well, I think it's true in like a metaphysical sense, in the sense that like her mother's always with her in her heart, kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that was kind of the point that she was trying to make, because Mary Gillell's grandmother, or this is what I got of it, grandmother was dead or whatever, but Clara was trying to say like, look, she's always going to be with you, and you're not going to mess us up.
Was the grandmother the previous singer?
I don't remember, but Mary Gillell was like specifically like she didn't want to disappoint everybody, but like specifically her mom or her grandmother.
Oh wait,
or
wasn't
whatever.
it her grandfather, which turned out to just be the alien?
Yeah, something like that. But like Clara was invoking the story. She's like, he's always with you, and you won't get it wrong. So
Yeah, and that's I don't
Always
know.
in your
I
heart.
really like that. It's pretty touching. I don't know what it is about Series 7.
if for some reason your cold, dark heart has thawed in the past 6 months,
It's just Series 7. It's just Series 7.
it's just Series 7.
Yeah.
We'll see about that.
I'm pretty sure it's just Series 7.
We'll see about that moving forward.
It was really just the past couple of weeks, like the beginning of Series 7. Like, screw that part of Doctor Who, honestly.
Well, I mean, Asylum of the Daleks was just... Asylum of the Daleks tried
dull in color palette and content.
Asylum of the Daleks tried to tug at your heartstrings in the most manipulative way possible and failed. So the Doctor and Clara go to watch this ceremony, and the Doctor's got
Which
like
is
a program.
And here's where like things get really insane in terms of the budget. Like all these different costumes. This isn't just like we have this costume and one person's going to be wearing it every scene to indicate multiple different aliens. This is like, I think Stephen Moffat said they made 60 different outfits.
Yeah, this is where they spent all their money on this episode. As you can tell, because the CG of Mary Gillell flying towards the pyramid is a little underbaked comparatively.
I liked the energy blasts or whatever near the end. The speeder is like, okay.
The speed
sure.
is...
It reminded me of the eel thing from 11th Hour in a way.
I don't remember what it was called now.
Yeah, same here. That's a problem with New Who enemies and villains, is that they're so less iconic than the classic
There's the
shows.
Slovene.
There's the Slovene, there's the Angels, but like
And, there's-
yeah.
Those fish tank people from Doctor's Daughter. They were pretty cool.
Oh right, the God.
I was going to say the Macra, but those are classic series villains.
yeah,
the
see,
Autons,
even,
too.
Even the like the mid tier ones, or like the low tier ones from the classic show, like the Macra, or the.
They were the monks, but we haven't met them yet.
Okay.
Series 10.
Well, we've met the monks, from the part as part
Different
of the church.
monks.
Okay.
There's a whole different thing in Stephen Moffat's era, also called the monks, which is great. I mean, there's the Silence.
Somehow, I don't know. I don't want to like try and psychoanalyze like Stephen. I feel like there's something like deep in his past with religion that he just can't get over.
Yeah, because I mean, this
The
story
angels,
is like
the church, the monks. Like,
this story.
Yeah.
I mean, this
God.
episode,
Yeah.
the God complex.
Oh God.
And I can't tell if Stephen Moffat is like in his
Stephen
run
Moffat, like,
anti-religion or
molested.
pro-religion.
Oh man, when I was looking up the Russell T stuff, I found out that Russell T is like a hardcore atheist, and he like baked some hardcore atheist ideas into the show that I didn't get at all when watching it. So
Yeah,
he did them
neither did
very
I.
subtly.
Maybe for the best.
Yeah, but according to him, they're there
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Moffat seems to be doing the opposite and seems to be very... What's the opposite of subtle?
in your face.
In your face about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that his messages are atheist. Kind of my question is, like, is Stephen Moffat anti-religion or pro-religion or neither? Just religion. I don't know.
Well, you can be one of those things and not express it through the stories you write.
Yeah, I guess I should make a distinction between what he is and what the stories are trying to say.
Yeah. Although maybe that's not true. I don't know. Maybe you somehow express it all in the stories you write. I don't want to risk, like, getting super, like, Rousseau-ish about it, but...
I don't want to risk psychoanalyzing Stephen Moffat through his stories.
No, neither do I.
So the doctor walks away, and Clara's like, "What? You're just gonna walk away?" And he's like, "Look, the one thing you gotta learn with me is that we never walk away." And then instead of getting in the TARDIS and flying the TARDIS over to that bad boy other asteroid, they go to the moped guy.
There's something really cool I thought was like the ceremony is held when the asteroids like line up, and there's another singer on one of the other civilizations. I guess it's only two of them, but it's better than none. And they're singing at the same time to keep the god asleep, because if he wakes up, he's going to destroy everything. Supposedly.
Turns out it didn't really matter because he was going to wake up anyway. At least that was my interpretation of this whole thing. My interpretation of this whole sequence was that, which is why I was suspecting that the story might be like anti-religion, is that my interpretation of the sequence of events was that it didn't matter what they did, that the god was going to wake up this cycle anyway.
Right, and that's also, I mean, that's definitely like, you can go the religion route with that, but I went, of course, the ecological route, because this is also about anthropocentrism, right? This is related back to things that, you know, occurred in history, like human sacrifice, which was done in civilizations across the world.
It was done on this TV show in the Aztecs.
Right, and it was often done to, like,
appease a god.
Appease the god, or bring in, like, a harvest, or, like, or, like, fertilize the land.
Which, in a way, was appeasing a god,
right,
the god of the harvest.
Right, and that's a very anthropocentric or human-centric view, where it's like what we do, you know, the land is affected because, or it's like the land, like, died because we didn't kill some, or, like, we didn't suffer, if that makes sense.
We didn't suffer, so the god's going to make us suffer.
Right.
But if we choose to suffer, then the god will smile upon us.
Right. When really, you know, it actually has nothing to do with whether you killed someone or not.
Yeah. The doctor and Clara trades her mother's, I think it was her mother's wedding ring.
I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Away for the moped speeder thing. Mm-hmm. And so they zoom off after Mary Gillel.
Yeah, because Mary gets sucked into the
kind of like main central pyramid, which is like what they're singing towards, which I guess like channels their singing into the sun. I don't think like these people realize that the like sun planet thing is Akhaten.
No, they don't. They think it's the guy in the glass container.
So
they think, because they go into the doctor and everyone else, or just Clara, I guess. They get into the pyramid. There's another fake out sonic screwdriver getting destroyed scene where it almost gets crushed by the door, but it doesn't. Doctor saves it at the last minute.
Well, the doctor's like making out like the door's like really heavy to hold up with the sonic screwdriver, and
right.
I was questioning that.
It's not something that's ever been on the show before.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting that the doctor's feeling like physical feedback from the sonic screwdriver.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if that was never done again.
And you would be correct in that assumption.
But it was all right. I guess it gives, because this episode, or especially this part, is very focused on Mary and Clara, so it's giving the doctor some sort of struggle in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the song, the other singer is like really intently and focused on trying to keep the god asleep, because we see the god and it looks kind of like something out of Alien.
Yeah,
it's like all mummified and it's sitting there on a throne asleep.
Then it wakes up, and the guy's just like, "Well, the song ends with me, bye," and he like
beams
out.
Yeah, but he seems really disappointed. He's like, "Oh shoot! Like this thousands of years legacy ends with me. Oh god!" and he teleports right out of there. And the god's waking up, and Clara. We skipped the part, actually. Let's touch back on this, where Clara is trying to open the TARDIS and she can't because she's trying to get Mary to safety.
Yeah.
And she says, "I don't think it likes me." And this is a moment where it's obviously this is I'm guessing is going to be related to events that play out later.
Mm-hmm.
This is also a moment where Clara is reading something representationally. She's using her five senses, sight, smell, touch, whatever, to interpret what's going on, which is also really important to this episode.
She's also, though, in the process ignoring Occam's razor, which is, if you don't know what it is, it's just the simplest solution is usually the correct one. And the simplest solution is just the Doctor locks the TARDIS door.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is true, presumably.
So one wonders why Clara is already jumping on this. Well, the TARDIS doesn't like me. There's some sort of indication that Clara has already picked up on the fact that the TARDIS is psychic in some way.
Right, that she sort of has access to information that isn't necessarily readily evident or something like that.
Right.
And this sort of, it touches back, I think, to this scene where Clara is like, if this thing wakes up, it's going to eat us alive. And Mary goes, not our what does she say? Not our meat, our souls.
Yeah.
That's something that lies beyond what's readily, apparent or whatever.
So the guy in the box wakes up, and the Doctor's trying to figure out, like,
what's going on,
how to make him go to sleep again.
Right.
But then he just, like, vanishes as well, and the Doc's like, what?
Well, the Doctor he realizes that the thing's he kind of actually distracts the singer who beams out. And he's like, it's happening. It's gonna, like, he's gonna wake up. You might as well just stop singing and stuff like that. But then when after a while, the alien disappears, and yeah, they're like, what the heck is going on?
And then the Doctor realizes that the sun behind them is like
the actual Akhaten, the actual god.
Yeah.
So I really liked this. This was like a classic Doctor Who cliffhanger in a way that the new series doesn't necessarily and can't necessarily because of the format do anymore. But this was awesome. Like it's classic on Doctor, like a cliffhanger like this, or not cliffhanger.
Except we still have 10 minutes left in the episode.
Not cliffhanger. I meant plot twist. Every time I said cliffhanger, I meant plot twist.
You're retconning your statement.
Yes, I am.
But you're not doing it in a good way, so consequences in this case cannot be reversed.
Oh, damn. Oh man, I just loved this. They say that the alien in the box was actually just the alarm clock.
Yeah.
Which I thought was just funny. Like, imagine having this thing be your alarm clock, where it's like you die if you don't
time to wake up.
Wake up or die.
Just screaming in the background. Well, time to wake up.
So you got to change your alarm every once in a while because you'll start sleeping through the same noise or whatever. That's my experience. But maybe I'll switch to this. Maybe I'll like record this, the alien screams, and play them back as my alarm.
The thing is, you gotta not pick something that you like for your alarm, though, because then you start to hate it because you associate it with the feeling of waking up in the morning. So the Doctor goes outside and is like, well, you want to feed on history? Feed on my memories. I know more than you can ever know. So the son obliges.
There's a pretty long, it's like 4 minutes, I think, the Doctor giving this speech about how he has value in his memories. He's accumulated stories within him, which are histories that are valuable, that he places value in, so the son can feed on that instead of all the people.
It's interesting the value he places on his memories in this story, given something that gets brought up in the 50th anniversary special. And I'm going to talk more about this when we get there, but essentially in the 50th, the 10th Doctor turns to the 11th. It's like, how many people died on Gallifrey, and the 11th Doctor doesn't remember. Mm-hmm. And they like make a big point of this. The 11th Doctor is the one who forgets the things he doesn't like. He just ignores it or pushes it away somewhere, and he forgets it. But in this story, it seems the opposite, where the 11th Doctor's like, I know all this stuff, all these bad things. I saw that, he says explicitly, like, he saw the end of the Time Lords and led them all to their graves or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, it's interesting. I want to talk about it more when we get to the 50th when we've watched that again, because my memory of how it plays out and that is fuzzy. But
That's coming up.
To me, it seems a little discordant between the two.
Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect.
The characterization of the 11th Doctor between those two is, I don't know, to me a little discordant.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it definitely seems that way. Even past stuff that we've gotten with the 11th Doctor has seemed in line with what you're describing. But I get it, like in an isolated sense of this story, which
yeah, I mean, I get it in this story.
Yeah, which I want to touch on all this sort of stuff at the end.
Also, Clara flies back out because she realizes the thing feeds on history, and she gives him the leaf. She's like, this leaf represents everything that could have been and everything that wasn't, but everything that was as well. And I'm like, I mean, by that logic, that could be true of like anything.
Well, everything that should have been. And I know we've talked about this on this podcast, I think, or maybe Zenith before, but the optative mood is something that's lost in English now, but exists in other languages still. And it's a grammatical mood that talks about how things should be.
Right.
Which is in some way being evoked here by this leaf. By a leaf of all things. But so the leaf, obviously she places value in it or whatever. It brought her parents together. And that has enough energy to overload and destroy Akhaten.
Yeah. This apparently has like infinite possibilities. I'm like, but then again, like that could be true of basically anything, right? Like if any object in existence represents millions of alternate timelines, like the Doctor says for the leaf, like this leaf represents millions of alternate things that could have happened.
Right, but it's also about like the value too of like this is the thing that brought her parents together, and her mother also died. So if her mother had lived, the relationship she could have had with her mother is in some way represented or symbolized by like this leaf or something like that. Yeah. But then so the thing gets destroyed, like totally vaporized. And here's the thing of like they kind of there's no aftermath to this. They just go to like the ending sequence of the Doctor and the companion in the TARDIS. Like we don't see, they mention like the people on the asteroids are doing fine, but
yeah, there's this question of like what happens on Akhaten because the Doctor and Clara just killed their god and basically like upended a foundational part of their religion.
Yeah, this is also like something, maybe just because I'm reading this stuff right now, but it's like, all right, colonialism is here in some way being evoked or whatever.
I mean, yeah, kind of. The Doctor is kind of the almost like the quote white savior unquote of these alien species comes in like, your religion is all wrong. That was like a big thing of colonialism, was like spreading Christianity to quote uncivilized unquote peoples. Right. And that's like, coming in this story, the Doctor shows up, he kills their god.
He ends their like thousands of years tradition.
Yeah, he ends their tradition because the god is dead.
It was malevolent, like, okay, but
it's like, to quote Nietzsche, God is dead and we killed him.
The Doctor killed him.
The Doctor killed him.
But this is also like an ecological thing too, of like, this is, whatever this thing is, this orb in the middle is like their planet somehow that they're related to. And it's like, how do you go on living without your planet? Although there's this thing of like, all right, it was a parasite and like...
But not only that, like just if you break it down to a granular science basis, this was providing heat and light and energy to the whole system, and it's now just... Gone.
Well, also the many pieces of the rings are like not going to be part of the same like society anymore, right? They're just going to fly off to wherever. But I kind of get it of like the Doctor says that this thing is a parasite rather than like a planet or a sun, because like if you think about it like from an Earth perspective is like we take from the Earth and we also give back to it, and that's why pollution is like a huge problem because we're destroying it. But if this thing's a parasite and it's only feeding off people rather than giving back to them, then like maybe it's a good thing. But still, it's like.
But I mean, the Doctor's looking at it from a very one-sided point of view because it's giving back in the form of light and heat and gravity, which bound these planets together so that they could form this multifaceted culture. Sure. And without that, maybe these would never have joined together. Maybe these civilizations wouldn't have even developed without that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think he's definitely looking at it from a perspective of like, I don't have to deal with this next adventure or next week or
Which is, again, it's one of those like kind of messed up things the 11th Doctor does that he just like brushes aside. Like he literally just basically ended thousands of years of tradition and culture and basically probably caused like a religious upheaval in this society. And he just seems to ignore that.
Yeah.
But we do get a scene between Clara and the Doctor where Clara realizes, because of something the Doctor said when she pulled out the leaf, that the Doctor knew the whole story behind the leaf, even though Clara hadn't told it to him. So she says, "You were there, weren't you?" And he's like,
Full
"Yeah,
of
I was
stories
just
full of history.
I was just checking up on your history." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you reminded me of someone who died." And he's like, "Well." And then we get the like anti-Martha statement here, where he's like, "Well, I'm not a replacement for anybody."
Really now.
She's like, "Whoever who died, I'm a different person." So
referencing, of course, Oswin and
Victoria and
Clara, but also in like a meta sense, referencing Amy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I would like this line if it felt more true, you know?
It's Stephen Moffat thinking he's cleverer than he actually is, because I'm going to come back to this line when we actually get the resolution to the Who Clara is arc.
Is it going to be something River-ish where it's like she's her own daughter and something weird? Not that River was her own daughter, but that it was like she was a daughter who's older than her mom, so like kind of a confusion there.
You'll find out.
Oh, God.
And then we get a trailer for next week, which I actually really liked because it didn't reveal the villain for next week, and the villain reveal next week, if I remember correctly, was done very well.
This is kind of a lame. I read the summary for next week, and it sounds kind of cool, but the trailer was kind of lame in my opinion. But we'll
I think next week is a Mark Gatiss penned episode, if I remember correctly.
Can't go wrong with Mark Gatiss. Actually, I don't know.
So
this is
out of 10.
I mean, despite what I said throughout this discussion, this is my favorite new Doctor Who episode.
I find it pretty dull.
We touched on this. But there's this thing in this story that kind of upsets, I don't know what we're in now, what people call it, like late capitalist, industrialist society. And
post-capitalism.
We touched on this, is like a lot of our systems are based on labor theory, which again is like the amount of work that goes into something is in some way related to its value.
Right.
And introduces like a subjective theory in place of that, which is kind of an older method. It's older, but like you think about how like the beginnings of capitalism as they're related to industrialism, and this is something that like it pulls apart. Like the what's it called? The assembly line is a mechanism that reduces the cost of labor while retaining the value. Retaining the value retains the price, essentially the cost. But to do that, you have to separate work. So instead of having, for example, a skilled craftsman, making tables, now it's, a machine, but also 20 people making tables, and they're unskilled and they're each doing one sort of thing. So it necessarily like pulls apart. But this subjective theory of value, I think, does in some ways the opposite, because it is something that is focused on connections. It's something that says, yeah, this dollar, to use the example from before, this dollar is worth more than a dollar because of its representative nature. It represents like the first dollar. It represents a change in my life or something that was important to me. The first dollar I ever made, so it's worth more. Going back and making those connections between things, and I don't know. This is just rambling now, but like maybe if we go back into the past, because economics and ecology are strangely always related because they have that same root eco, and there's this thing like a couple hundred years ago called, I think it's pronounced economics, but it's spelled O-economics, like economics with an O stuck at the beginning, and it's basically household management. It's observing your surroundings and figuring out how things work, which I think it's pretty easy to see how that evolved into both economics and ecology. And that's something that's based on those connections of like how systems work together and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe if we take what we have now and try and inject some of this subjective theory of value into it, maybe we can, I don't know, go back and see how that starts to make sense in some way, but also, I don't know, see how representative value or something like that seems to make sense. And this touches back also into how stories seem to make sense in relation to history, as I don't know, like a dream interpretation or a story interpretation, like they're representative of something, they stand in for something. I don't know. That's just me rambling, but
I don't know. I almost feel like the economy in this story presented is almost like a future evolution of capitalism almost. I mean, capitalism started with trading, like, oh, this seashell has value. I'll give you this seashell for that piece of obsidian. And then paper money is just representative of the value that we place on gold and silver. Like, your currency has no value if you don't have gold or silver to back it up. Like, the original dollar was a banknote that said, this entitles you to $1 worth of gold from the Federal Reserve. And you were basically money standing in for trading gold. And this is almost like in the future, it's like instead of we place our value instead of on gold, we place our value on memories. And it's
which is invoking this other thing of like what you talked about, like seashells and stuff like that.
Almost kind of just the horseshoe theory of of money. We go back to what seems to be seashells and obsidian, but really it's like a more evolved form because now it's dependent on the memories we've placed on these objects as well.
Yeah, maybe. That's
interesting. Most interesting part of the story because it falls off pretty rapidly when they start singing for me, and it just I don't know, it just feels like it slows down like a lot. Like,
I didn't think so.
Not a lot happens in the second half of the episode compared to the first. And I kind of wish they'd dove more into the ramifications of the Doctor's actions here, because in regards to like previous stories, they're some of the biggest or most wide-reaching consequences.
Yeah, this story does feel very disconnected from anything else, and that's, I think, a part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that we get it's interesting. I guess I'll talk about this next week, that next week's episode is very small scale compared to this one, because this is a very like galaxy ending threat, because they mention that I guess, like, I don't know, like Galactus, the Akhaten is gonna roam across the galaxy just eating people's souls for all eternity.
Like Unicron.
Yeah. And then next week we get a very small scale self-contained episode, which maybe also might come down to like they spent all the budget on this episode and next week they're like, oh shoot, we gotta maintain our story to like one set location.
Well, it's all on a submarine, I think, based on the description.
Yep.
Although who knows, like descriptions are misleading. They might come out of nowhere where it's like the second half isn't on a submarine.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
When you're watching Blake 7, you know, because they usually switch up the location. If it's not obvious, I actually miss Blake 7. I know I joked about missing Blake 7.
2 months.
Like, I actually do miss
Let
watching
it go.
Blake 7. No.
Let
I have
it go.
audios to listen to. I have books to read.
Do you?
Yeah. I don't have them, but they're available to me.
You could always just let it go, like I accidentally did when I nuked Zenith from the face of the planet.
What, that made you let go of Blake 7?
Yep, briefly. And then everyone was like, what happened to Zenith? I was like, damn, now I gotta put it back. That's how that happened.
So you're saying you didn't want Zenith back?
I thought for a moment that I could just
end it all.
That it would almost be funnier and
more
fondly remembered if it had just been nuked. People tend to remember things that they can't go back and rewatch or reread better because they have no way of like confirming or denying their suspicions.
Oh god, this is some real manipulative stuff. But it's back.
I mean, we saw that even with Doctor Who, where like the missing episodes, people were like, "Oh man, that was really good." But then, like when they found
was the best Doctor Who episode ever.
They like find the episode and they watch it and they're like, "Wow, this really wasn't as great as I remembered."
Well, Power of the Daleks was a big hit. The animation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess it's not like the same as finding something. It's representing it. It's standing in for it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway. You can email us at thedoctor@decorative.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Akhaten, the
planet, the god, the deity.
Yeah. that. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time,
Cold War.
are watching Cold War. But until then, the end.